Did you know soil scientists estimate that 57.6 billion tons of topsoil have been lost in the United States over the last 160 years? In 1935, during the Dust Bowl, more than 850 million tons of topsoil had blown off the southern plains, and farmers lost an average of 480 tons per acre. It can take 1,000 years to build 1 inch of fertile topsoil, but only hours to blow or wash it away. Protecting our fertile soils with sustainable practices is paramount for our yields, our livelihoods, and our world.
So when we talk about soil health, that continued capacity of a soil to function as a vital living ecosystem, what are some functions we want our soils to provide to us? What do we want them to do? Hold water. Yep. Last 2 years, that's always been the very first answer. Take in water and hold it and pull it down, right? So we've got a water bank. What else? Oh boy, we got 2 twins, 1 on each side. Nutrient cycling from 2 sides. Yep, that's another good function of high functioning soils. What else do we want them to do? You're not doing this for free, right? You want to yield, right? That's one thing for sure we want to have our soils do. So we want it to provide us with something back. What else do we want them to do? It's pretty important when we do get these heavy rainfalls. Stay in place. Yes, we want them to resist erosion. Whether they're blowing or flowing, we got to stop both of those. And the thing that does that, of course, are these nuggets or aggregates.
Healthy soil contains aggregates that help it bind together, preventing erosion and runoff. Healthy soil is a living ecosystem. Good bacteria and fungi help plants fight diseases and pests, and rich stores of minerals and nutrients feed plants and reduce input costs for producers.
We want to see good aggregates all the way down, as much as we can. We want to see the roots, we want to see the earthworm channels. Like they say, it's not about how much rain you got, it's how much were you able to utilize. We're creating those pore spaces, we're getting soil structure. Yeah, it's all about infiltration. We don't have runoff problems, we have infiltration problems.
Here are some ways to maximize the health of your soil. Maximize the presence of living roots. Minimize disturbances. Maximize soil cover. Maximize biodiversity.
The principles for a lot of people are a number, but it's really important because what creates this are those microscopic animals and the larger animals that live in the soil. So we've got earthworms, that make these big pore spaces that allows roots to follow those same root channels. We have the bacteria that go in and change and transform your nitrogen into a plant available usable form. That's really important. We have our arbuscular mycorrhizae that when we do get into these little dry periods can reach out and extend that rooting system up to 10 times in distance and catch and break those chemical bonds that hold all of your phosphorus tied up so they can break those bonds between calcium and iron and magnesium. So that's really super important that we culture this biology. That's what we're farming. We're farming biology. We're not really farming the crops. The crops are the side hustle. The real thing here is the biology. And in order to feed this biology, we've got to provide it with continuous living roots as many months out of the year as we possibly can.
Cover crops are different from cash crops. Cover crops' primary job is to improve the soil. They get planted in fields in between growing seasons.
And those cover crops doing 2 things, just producing those roots, feeding each other, to keep that living root going all the time, to keep those, they call them the glues, the sugars that those roots produce, and those deep tap-rooted crops and your brassicas that go deep, we're hoping they'll go down and pull up some nutrients. Either a cow will eat it, and 80% of what she eats will go out the back end of her. So those nutrients are going to be up on top in an available form, or even if it doesn't get eaten, it'll lay there on the surface in theory. So then, say it's potassium or whatever, it's pulled up from down deep, then that'll be there on top. So the next, it'll slowly work down, but the next crop will have a better chance of getting it because it's closer to the top. Just kind of helps bring that up to get rid of some of that stratification that people worry about. And just, like I say, feeding that crop, keeping a living plant, keep those aggregates coming so we can get the rain to infiltrate like it's supposed to, and just numerous benefits. There's studies where they've been able to use cover crops and not put fertilizer on. They come back 5-6 years later and there's more nutrients than there was before it started. So these crops are unlocking the geology that's there.
For me, it's weed suppression and erosion control is mainly my goal to start. I think there is some benefits to organic matter for the soil health with the rye, maybe capturing some nitrogen. I'll learn more as we move forward.
Biggest benefits would be the pigweed reduction, holding pigweeds back, holding moisture, and just recently we're really seeing our organic matter raise.
You know, we've toyed with some perennials. We've done perennials actually on croplands on a field like this that we've grazed for 4 years, and then went back and did cash crops, and that's when we found our infiltration rates really went up in the cropland, is by putting the perennial graze system. They have more root mass than these plants, so that's why the infiltration rate goes up, is because the root mass is a lot denser and does a lot more to get water going in the ground than these annuals.
The second thing is minimizing disturbance. And there's a lot of different types of disturbance. We've got physical disturbance, such as tillage. We've got chemical disturbance, such as fertilizers and herbicides. Even fire is a disturbance. We got to try to minimize that disturbance as much as possible, but we cannot say we can eliminate it, because we want our soils to get to this nugget stage. It'll be resilient and it can bounce back from that, and we will have less issues with this compaction zone. That minimizing disturbance also can be biological. So if we're overgrazing in a rangeland state, that's a big disturbance. Big windstorms, tornadoes, all of these different types of disturbance, we need our soils to be resilient to resist that.
The no-till works really well in this area. We've changed from being a wheat, sorghum, fallow operation to with a no-till. Now we are cropping every acre every year.
Then we got into a conventionally tilled field that's been conventional tilled, hard disked for several years, and we didn't see the microbes working, didn't see as many earthworm holes and channels and stuff, and the soil just, you could just tell it needed some structure to it.
The next thing we want to do is to protect them. So we got to keep the soil covered as often as possible. Otherwise it'll start blowing and flowing again. We're going to lose it.
I never want to see the soil, so we're going to leave a matter residue. That's the plan. If you're going to graze it hard enough that it looks like a dry lot, you're not grazing. You have a dry lot, and that's where you're going to get into trouble with your compaction.
Keeping the soil covered also helps insulate against high temperatures that can kill off biology.
Another one is maximizing biodiversity. If I told you were going to live on hot dogs for the next 3 years, how would you like that? At first it'd be good, right? Because I like a good hot dog every once in a while. But after like week 1, you're going to be like, is there something more? No, it's hot dogs. Not a real good diet.
I'm of the theory you can't have too much variety.
When we started, it was just a single species of German millet, and now we're planting cocktail mixes of cover crops, and the things we've seen in the soil from the mixes has been cool to see too, and eye-opening.
If we can bring in the animals as a component, bring in the cover crops, if you've got the capability to graze those with the animals, those things just go together, like peas and carrots. They're really two wonderful things.
So on our grazing of the cover crop, we use a strip grazing system. It really helps utilize the forage there, but also leave the residue levels that we would like to leave on top of the soil. And we found that's been very beneficial. We've probably, in a very simple test I did, we increased utilization of the forage by 80% and still left the ground cover that we deem as necessary. And so we'll strip graze, we'll move them anywhere from every day to every 2 or 3 days, depends on our time, what we have as labor, and the situations of the cover crops.
I mean, from a profitability standpoint, these systems do work. They do cost less over time. It's not a silver bullet. These cover crops don't do it all on their own. It's a system. It has to be integrated with the principles. You've got to keep the soil covered. You've got to diversify. And at the end point, if you can add the animals, that's the pinnacle.
The proof's in the combine. Yield's important, don't get me wrong, but it's profit per acre, long-term profit per acre. It's a three-legged stool. It's the physical, the chemical, and the biological side. These cover crops, this biology, it's helping the soil structure side, and it's definitely helping the biological side. A healthy crop, we know it when you see it. The more diversity you add into it, the better. And by diversity, I mean different crops, different cover crops, even I think different animals would be great. They say you can get to the same soil health point without livestock, but it's just going to take you a lot longer to get there.
On both the crop ground and the native range, we've seen the improvement in the infiltration. On the native range, it was a very neat process. The hills that were shot through the video used to be the way we filled those ponds was from runoff from big rains. But once we improved our native range and improved the ground cover, the big rains did not fill our ponds right away, and it was actually concerning. But what we noticed was just the springs running throughout the whole year filled our ponds gradually through the year. It was a very neat process. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen from the rotational grazing. Yeah, so profitabilities went up, and it's a whole different world from when I was a kid of what we do. You know, we don't spend hours out there V-blading summer fallow. Now we're just doing crops and checking crops and managing those.
You know, we were in a conventional commodity market operation for a number of years, and for many years I've seen a lot of dollars leave the reservation and in turn never coming back, and that's due to chasing the high yields that we've done in our previous model. So we've completely changed our model now. We focus on the livestock, the microbiology of the soil structure, and we've seen tremendous value by doing that and just the flourish of life.
Learn more about how you can improve the health of your soil at our live demo.
So this kind of simulates what NRCS calls a 10-inch storm, which is what they design your terraces for when you get terraces. So right away you can see in this till pan that shattering that's occurring. Those raindrops are hitting that soil surface, and just like a bomb, they're exploding. They're breaking up into those individual sand silt clay particles, and you can see them on that backsplash. It's making pretty much a good sized mess. This is a travesty when we think about the sheer volume of loss. This is what's costing, you as a producer a lot of money, and society money as well from a water quality standpoint, having to clean this up to drink it. So this is what we want to try to see, is this continuous living roots, the cover, the biodiversity, the principles that build that soil health, that sustains us so that we can continue to thrive and survive.
Knowledge is power in agriculture. Learn more by contacting your local conservation district, and be on the lookout for field tours and soil health workshops. Healthy soil practices are the cornerstone of a sustainable and prosperous future for farmers, the environment, and our global community.